All right, I appreciate the opportunity of being here. And what I have is a lot of history and a lot of experience that I intend to share with you today. So I thought the first thing I would do is tell you a little bit more about me. Besides, my picture, and I see me, the reality of me, right? Here at Utah State. A few other pictures, you probably don't know what they are. They're headquarter buildings of big computer companies. I think there's one there of Microsoft, there's maybe one there of that's the new Apple kind of building design. And then a couple others, HP and IBM. So I'm going to talk about a career in MIS, a little bit as it relates to me, but before we get started, essentially my connection to MIS now, 5 years ago I retired. I came to Utah and was a senior vice president and chief information officer for O.C. Tanner, about 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And I did that job for about 7 years. I retired about 5 years ago, and I'm still connected to the Professional Society of Computer People. I'm the director of the AIM Utah Leadership Development Institute. So that's kind of what I do for the society. I've got a lot of experience. The beauty about that, you have a lot of experience. The problem with that is you're old. Right? So I want to share some of that experience with you. Been the CIO for 30 years for a variety of companies. I'll tell you a little bit of the story about there. I've got recognized for awards a variety of times. I've got various connections. In fact, I was, for a couple of years, I was a technology advisor right here to the business college. And I think about 3 years ago, I got busy doing other things, and I haven't been doing that. So this is really who I am. And that's my wife. And that's my Harley. And that's how I came today from Lehi, Utah, to Logan. It's a nice ride. And you see how red my face is? You might think I'm a redneck, but actually my wife and I just spent the last couple of days at Zions National Park and Bryce. And, at 8,000 or 9,000 feet, the sun is stronger than you think. And by the way, we did it on the Harley. So we just got back yesterday. Face red, right? So that's my wife, Betty, and we're having fun on the Harley. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about how I got started. I started with the U.S. Navy a long, long time ago. I was trained as an air controller and electronics technician. One of the things I didn't do that you all are doing is when I got out of high school, I was tired of learning and decided to join the Navy and see the world. And rather than read more books. So I did go into the Navy. I spent 4 years in the Navy. I did the electronics. I got 100 carrier landings on aircraft carrier. I was the air controller. I wasn't the pilot. I was the air controller in the aircraft, controlling other aircraft. So when I got out of the Navy, I went to look for a job. I was born and raised in Massachusetts. You might get that idea as idea, car, kind of things like that. You kind of notice I haven't got rid of that. So when I got out of the Navy to get a job, I lived in Massachusetts, and there was a bunch of places in Massachusetts hiring electronics people, and I thought this is kind of cool. And my father had heard of a company called IBM that were hiring people in New York. And I thought, New York? That's so far from Massachusetts. Why would I want to go there, right? But he prevailed, and I went to interview with IBM in Poughkeepsie, New York. And I was blown away. At the time, they had really, really large computers. Really large, vacuum tube kind of computers. And it was a huge building, and what they did is they assembled these computers before they went to a customer's place. And they were looking for manufacturing test engineers, and my job would be to, once the computer was all assembled, to make sure it worked. It all worked well before we actually packaged it up and shipped it. It was about, at the time I joined IBM, in the early 60s, you know, you guys weren't even here then. In the early 60s, it was a 12-week process by the time you assembled the computer on the floor, got it to work, and shipped it to a customer. So that's how I started. Once I got out of the Navy, I mean, I went to work for IBM in Poughkeepsie, New York, and then San Jose, California. I was there for 23 years. I started as a test engineer, you know, related a little bit to what I'd done in the Navy, in both manufacturing on the floor, and then I moved into engineering and did testing for the engineering machines, and then I moved into software and tested for software. You know, make sure the new software actually worked. Right? I did that for 10 years. Then I did system software development for 3 years. And at the end of that, I was asked to go to IT. This is my first IT job. It was the systems administration and operations. I ran a data center for a division of IBM. Finally, I became the divisional CIO for the division, and then I actually left IBM after 23 years, and I've been a CIO for other high-tech companies. So why is this interesting? It's interesting for a couple of reasons. Let me show you. Once you get to a place in your career, wherever that place is, you're going to have to make a decision about what it is that you want to do. Do you want to be in kind of management, or do you want to stay in the non-management, like individual contributor? IBM had a kind of a dual career path. Once you got to a certain point, it would go this way with management and this way for individual contributor, and they were at the same pay level. So it wasn't any pay differential. Now, one of the things that I enjoyed, just kind of probably part of my makeup, was I enjoyed to learn new things and to solve problems. And I got to be very good at the computer things and solving problems on the computer things. And it was a very large sense of satisfaction to me. So we came to the point where I needed to make a decision as to whether I was going to go into management or stay in the individual contributor, and kind of guess what you would think I would say. I like what I'm doing. I can solve problems. I enjoy the computer. What advantage is there to having just a whole bunch of people you have problems with? No, I don't want to do that. I want to stay in the computer. You know, I want to still learn more about the computers, be better at it, solve problems with the computers. So 3 months after I had that discussion with my manager came to me and said, "Let me tell you about your new job." I said, well, what is my new job? "You're the manager of this department." And I said, wait a minute. We just had a discussion 3 months ago, and I said I don't want it. Said, "You will really be good at it, and we need you. So give it a try, would you?" So I said, okay, I'll try it, right? So I learned two things. This is what I'll share with you. I found that being a manager was even better than being the problem-solving technical person. Why? Because as the manager of this department with responsibilities, I passed out the work. And I could pick which work I wanted to do and which work I would pass out. It's kind of cool. You know, as the individual contributor, I was the passee from the passor. Now I'm the passor, and I have 8 or 10 passees. Really cool, right? But that wasn't the most exciting. The most exciting part that I learned, that these 8 passees that I had now, knew things that I didn't know, and had competencies in areas that I didn't have competencies. And you know what they love to do? They love to teach me. You know what? And when I listened and learned, They loved me more. They thought I was a great manager. I'm thinking, this is cool. You know, they teach me. I get to do still the kind of work I want to do. How could, you know, what was I thinking when I said I just wanted to do the technical work? Where was I thinking, right? Now, so I became right up at that early time, I became a first-line manager and then actually became a second-line manager. You know, a little bigger responsibility, right? So we kind of want to track through that a little bit now. At this point here, system software development, I became a third-level manager. You know, I got another kind of a promotion, right? Same was this. This was at the third level. And then here was at the fourth level, you know, at the CIO level. So why is this interesting? I assume that in your careers, you would like to be the best you can be, and you'd like to make the biggest contribution you can make. Is that true? Does anybody not want to do that? Because if you don't, you can leave right now. Because I want to talk about how that happened to me and how might you think about it happening to you. Now, you're in a much better place than I was, because here I was, a non-college graduate with some electronics training that went into IBM with a bunch of engineers and a bunch of college graduates, and I did very well. So how did that happen? How did I do so well? Being as dumb as I was, I mean, educationally, right? Well, really, there's two things I want you to think about. One is, it just relates to me, I loved what I did. I really loved what I did. And I wanted to be really good at what I did. And I actually got good at what I did. Right? And part of what drove me was this quest for learning. So I had a drive to learn and to be good at what I did. No matter where I was and what I did, I had a drive to be good at it, to be very good at it, and to make sure I knew everything I could about it. So with that kind of a philosophy, I didn't have any trouble getting people to teach me, right? I mean, would you teach your boss if he liked you for it? Yeah, right. It's cool, right? So I love what I did. I was a problem solver and a learner. And all of that ended up in the progress I made. I have to say this, and probably all a little bit this way. I was actually born a geek right out of my mother's womb. I mean, the first words I spoke were binary. Bit, 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 not a bit, not a bit. You know, it wasn't ma. It was bits and non-bits, right? Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit here, you can tell. But my point is this. In some way, we're all geeks. What does it mean to be a geek? That you're more interested in things than you are people. Okay? And we're all geeks. We got our things that we're interested in, right? Now, things are important. And you need to learn about things and make contributions with regard to things. But one of the things that happened to me at this point here, when they made me a manager, and I found out how cool that was, I quickly learned that the thing that was more complex and complicated than computers and software and hardware and networks were people. So, if that's the case, and I wanted to be good at being a people manager, I better learn about people. So I had the same level of enthusiasm, interest, and dedication to learning how people work and how to solve problems with people as I did with computers. And I found that to be fascinating. And interesting, computers, I mean, they're kind of predictable. You know, bits, no bits. You know, ands, ors, exclusive ors. I mean, it all works when it's working, right? The problem with people is it's not always working when it's working. And, you know, an interesting kind of a challenge. So let's go on a little bit. Give you a little bit more interesting stuff here. When I joined IBM, it was early 60s. I think it was right in 60. We're making the transition from vacuum tubes to transistors, then into integrated circuits, complex instruction set computing, reduced instruction set computing, and then virtual. Way back in the 60s, you know, virtual was a big deal. It's now one of the really hot technologies. In fact, if I describe the hottest technology in one word, it'd be virtual. Virtualization, everything, right? And I can kind of walk you through a little bit of that. We'll get to a part where I'll talk a little bit about the technologies. So, why is this interesting? Because history leads us to the future. And, you know, all the great strides that have been made. And the question is, you know, I've seen the last 40 years. What's going to happen in the next 40 years? If you go back 40 years, you can see, wow, what a change. What a change. I mean, this iPhone is more powerful than a computer that took this whole room, you know, 40 years ago, right? And the use of computers have changed. The technology keeps expanding. So, there's going to be a lot of advances in hardware and technology. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And we're going to focus a little bit more on this virtualization, because those are really big, the big advances, virtualization, and the transition of IT. So let's talk about a little bit of that. In the beginning, the person that was the king of data processing was the guy that sat behind that console. And no customers or no other employees from any department ever got in there. How did you get something good out of that? You handed him a deck of cards. You didn't even hand it to him. You slipped it through a slot. Right? And he took the cards magically, put them in the reader, run the application that was going to run, and then you got reports out. And you come and pick up your reports. That was kind of the beginning, computing. You know, the computing guy, if we were talking about MIS, that would be you, right? Sitting at that, you know, doing it all, right? What is all? All means you run a computer, right? You bring the thing in, you put it in, you know, a few other jobs, but mostly that. Then we went to the transistors version. Similar kind of stuff went on, but someone had the idea, why don't we connect the computer so everybody in the business can see what's going on and can use it? So we then had the dumb terminal era connected to the mainframes, and then we came with PCs and then started connecting PCs to the mainframe. Why? Because it was a productivity tool, and you needed to connect to the source of all intelligence here, the computer, to get your work done. You know, and as a result of that, then more and more business applications were developed. And why was business applications developed? To put a bunch of ladies, old ladies in the back room out of work? No. No. Pardon? Yeah, it was to be more productive, right? We could do things with a computer faster than any person could do it. And so we started now this process of automation. And we started then really developing the functions of IT, of MIS. You know, if you look at the kind of functions of MIS, you can broadly define them as a data center, you know, things that all the hardware, networks, and all that goes. And the other side, applications, business applications that you actually build and run, right? The two big pieces of MIS. So the problem here is depicted right here. As soon as we connected the computer to the business user, they were angst. Why were they angst? Because the application didn't run that well. Sometimes it took various versions to get it to work right. You know, we built an application to do a business function. The business told us what they needed. We'd go run the app, we'd, put it together, and it wouldn't work exactly the way they thought, or we thought, or it should work, right? And so we had this trouble. And for a long time, computer users would look this way. Now, it wasn't damaging to the business because it only was affecting the inside employees of the business. If the inside employee couldn't do something and we're out of work for half an hour or so while the computer was doing something, all we did is lose a little money, right? Had some people. We didn't have any bad feelings. We didn't hurt any customers on the outside, did we? They didn't even see it, right? So all the business customer interface at this period of time was through people, not through computers. Now that's changing, isn't it? Now, MIS has had a great deal of trouble building business apps that worked right the first time. A great deal of trouble. Put business processes and a lot of things together to try to get it work right the first time. So now what we did, we went to servers, and then we went to servers. We have thousands of servers, right? And then we connected those to customers, actually customers. And we wanted the customers to be excited about the business app. So we entered into a whole new problem area that if I had trouble building applications for the internal business departments of a company, what kind of trouble do you think I would have building them for my customers on the outside? For the first place, when you build them for, like I'm building this for manufacturing. So who would I go to see in manufacturing and say, what do you need? I go to see the people in manufacturing, right? I say, what do you need? So you write down what you need, then we go back, we build what you need, we go back, iterate back and forth, and you give them what you need. And if it doesn't work right, who tells me? They do, right? Now I build it for my customers. Who tells me what my customers need? Who? How do I gather that requirement? I mean, at least in finance or manufacturing, I got someone I can talk to, right? How do I pick which customers I go talk to and find out what they need? It's a little harder, isn't it? How do I know when the customers are unhappy? Well, they tell me, I leave things. I build a system so they can tell me they're unhappy, right? So all I'm saying is now when we've taken it to this level, and this has only been probably in the last decade that we've really come to this, where now people are buying things online. You got regular ones, Amazon, everybody's getting their website to do things, right? And wanting to do more and more. So the significant problem then, today the customers are our users. And that demands a higher level of service. I mean, we could get away when you deal with the finance guy, to have the thing break on you every now and then, right? But you can't do that with customers. Now what you're doing when you build the MIS, what you're doing, you're putting your customer and your business at risk. It's just not wasting a few dollars. You're putting the business at risk if you don't do this right. And gathering requirements from customers is hard. So you say, well, wow. Then what might your role be here? I mean, part of MIS is doing this, making the business work better and making sure that we're successful at it, right? Now, let's go on. One of the things you're probably going to get the idea is, I think an MIS career is great. I kind of accidentally fell into it. By the way, I didn't even select MIS. Not being, actually when I joined IBM, there wasn't even an MIS curriculum. You know, what IBM did is we taught computer stuff to the new hires. You know, they came in with music degrees and, you know, finance degrees, whatever. Just, but we kind of said, if they have a degree in something, then we know that they know how to learn, and we'll teach them computers. Because there wasn't anybody teaching computers, you know, none of the computer hard sciences and none of the stuff that supports computers like MIS. So why? Well, here's number one. It's the best business and technology learning opportunity. I can't think of a better. So if you're interested in learning business and learning technology, there's not a better place to be. Because now you're focused on the business. Because all businesses run through MIS. And generally the case is that the MIS people know more about how the business works than the business people themselves. I mean, I'm not saying that the finance guy doesn't know finance, or the customer service person doesn't know customer service. But when you put it all together, the person that really knows it the best is MIS people, because we see it from the inside out. The business runs with MIS. Okay, that's the first reason. The second reason is a better opportunity to be an individual contributor. Why? Because IT does lots of development projects. No function in the business can be improved without an effect on IT. So therefore, everybody's trying to make the business go better. Guess what happens? There's a whole bunch of work to be done in IT to make those things work. So a lot of opportunity. Opportunity for being recognized and doing some good things. Third, it's really a good pay scale. They pay a lot of money for problem solving, you know, and to help orchestrate making the business better. You know, business thinks if some group can help me make this run better, get more customers, they pay well. So those are the three reasons I think that MIS is a great career, even though I did not choose it. Let me tell you that story. Remember, I was in my third year of development, systems development, and my last year, I asked my manager, I was a third level manager at the time, remember? And I asked him, could you take me out of management for a year? We've now architected a system. I was part of the team that built a new database system, which the words you wouldn't even know because it was so long ago. So I won't describe it to you. A new database system. So I said, great, could you take me out of management? Remember, I love to do the technical work. Let me have a year sabbatical out of management and let me help build this. I'd like to do that. And so we're going to build it in two different kind of systems. We're going to build it in one system that I was very familiar with, in another system we had to build it and I wasn't familiar with at all. Since I have an inclination to want to learn more, I decided I would like to do the one I didn't know much about. Let me out and let me work on the one that I knew the least about. Doesn't make sense, does it? But it made sense to me, because here's an opportunity to learn. Because that's another theme I want to give you through this whole thing, is life is all about learning. And what you've done here, albeit you think significant, is really insignificant in the grand scheme of things. And if life isn't all about learning, you're going to be disappointed, right? It's all about learning. So I picked that one. Said he'd give me a year. We were 9 months into it, and my boss called me into the office again. He said, let me tell you about your new job. I said, wait a minute, what new job? I got 3 more months that you promised me that I could put this thing together. He said, oh, we're almost done. We got something important to do. This got me into IT, right? So he said, your new job is you're the manager of the San Jose Consolidated Data Center. I said, you know, I don't even know what you said. How could I be the manager of it? So he went on to describe. He says, well, the company decided they're going to consolidate, you know, IT. We got a group over here that's supporting the development of software. We got a group over here that's supporting the engineers and the developing of new hardware. We're going to put these together, and you're going to run it. said, wait a minute, not so fast. I don't even know any of that stuff, right? I said, okay. I said, tell me a little bit more about it. Who's the guy that's currently running the one for engineering? Gave me a name. I said, that guy's got to be more qualified than me. Why doesn't he do it? Remember, I didn't want to do this, right? And he says, well, the programming group on the other side, he doesn't meet their requirements. I said, what about the guy over here then? The problem is those guys over there say no. He said, the good news is that senior management think you're the right guy for this job. Right? I said, yeah, because I know nothing. So that's how I got into IT. Right? I mean, I didn't go to college. I didn't say that's my goal. I didn't, start it this way. Now, there's nothing wrong with all that. I'm not saying there is. I'm just giving you my experience. Right? In fact, I think you're ahead of me, way ahead of me, in terms of you're on the track. I mean, I had to do a lot of this myself. All right. We got some interesting more things to talk about. So what does an MIS career look like? Well, I gathered up some data and said from the U.S. government, although the U.S. government doesn't look good right now, the growth for the next 10 years looks pretty positive. The IT growth, or some of the jobs in IT, are growing faster than many of the jobs. Not just a few of them here. Are in the upper echelon of growth in jobs. So that's a good idea. Get someplace where there's going to be a growth, right? How about current job satisfaction? IT jobs are in the top 30 jobs defined as most satisfying. Now, most satisfying isn't that satisfying. Let me just say that now. There's been a trend to being dissatisfied with jobs in the last 3 or 4 years, right? So the most satisfying are not highly satisfying, but they're still the most satisfying. IT is in that group of most satisfying. Again, I said technology and business learning is another big plus to be in MIS. And contribution, a key factor, because there's everything goes through MIS. There's lots of projects and lots of ways that you can be successful there. Then there's the business development side of IT, because IT itself is a business. So when you look at IT as a business, you look at a bunch of methodologies and a bunch of books written about methodologies. Because the idea here is to make the business of doing IT a more efficient business. So like IT is making the business more efficient, IT itself is in the throes of how can I make me more efficient in this process. So IT has been a leader in lean and agile methodologies. Many of them have started in IT. Lots of project management, which is a methodology. And change management for stability and continuous changing business environment. So there's a whole set of methodologies that go along with running an IT business, because IT in itself is a business. And then it's all about improving the way IT does business. Right? Any questions so far? Does anybody want to change their major to MIS? There you go. You going to Russia too, or? No, right? No, cool. Well, it's pretty exciting. I've really loved it. I got kind of into it accidentally, whatever that means. I was chosen, yes.
I have a question. So you said you were a geek out of the world.
Yes.
I think there's a misperception, though, that you really have to be a technology, you have to be a programmer, you have to like the computer better than people if you want to be an MIS.
No, that's not true at all.
Is there a place for people who aren't maybe as technical?
Absolutely. Can I tell you the story about
Please.
A good friend of my son's was a graduate from Utah State. He had a BS in something. See how I'm focused on that? He had a BS in something, but he had an MS in instructional technology. And he was working for a finance company, And he'd been doing a bunch of, since he had his instructional stuff, he was doing a bunch of training. He seemed to be a good trainer. And so he knew that my son, and he knew that I was a chief information officer. And I came out here, I was at the time in Boulder, Colorado, working in Colorado. I came out for the holidays, and so my son asked me if I'd take a half an hour, meet this guy, and give him some advice. He was trying to figure out what he wanted to do. I met him and talked to him. And he had a little bit of idea about IT because when he was doing some project stuff, you know, you had to know something about IT, right? So when I met the guy, I said, I like this guy. Really like this guy. He was a consultant. He was a trainer. He's very likable. He looks like he had, you know, leadership kind of skills. And so when I went back to Colorado, I was looking for a job as a manager. Now, this guy knew nothing about IT, right? He thought a server was a waiter that brought food. So I went back to Colorado, and I talked to my, come on in. Sorry. That's okay. Late is better than not coming. So I talked to my team back there and showed him his resume, which showed he had no IT experience, right? And I would make him a manager over, I think it was a small data center kind of stuff group, right? And they said, what? Why would you do this? This guy doesn't know anything about IT. I thought to myself, I know everything about IT. I'm an expert at it. Why do I have to hire someone that's an expert at IT? I want a guy that can be a leader. I can teach him. Guess what I remembered from when I was in IBM? The people that he works for, if they like him, they'll teach him, and they'll form a relationship. So I hired him. So he came out, and he was very successful. He knew nothing about IT, right? But he had a set of skills. He was highly successful in that job, and I even expanded his job. Gave him some development work as well while we were there. I later left and went to be the senior vice president at OC Tanner. And a year or two later, I hired him back at a director level, running my data center. And then I made a change, and he ran the development organization. Did it very well. Today, he is a vice president of operations for a manufacturing company, and he has under him IT, customer service, manufacturing. So I would say, and he knows a bit about IT now, right? He does, right? He turned out to be very good. Does that help? Now that's unusual. It's unusual, right? That you have no experience at all and you get hired into a management job. So that's the exception, not the rule. I just liked the guy. And I had a need, and he looked like he could fill the need very well. You know, the need of relating to the, see, he was a consultant. Consultants relate to executive level people, and they relate to other people. So he had skills that could be beneficial to me, so I hired him. Okay. Now we're going to get to the hot technologies. Not going to spend a lot of time here. The biggest hot technology is, I think, virtual technologies. You all know what they are. You know, it's an old technology. You know, IBM started fooling around with virtual technologies in the 60s. You know, and all of a sudden it's got very, very, very interesting. Probably in the 80s and 90s it started to get more interesting. And, you know, if you think of virtualization in the sense that, and you just don't limit it to hardware, you can actually now you can start pushing it up the stack. If you think about it in terms of hardware, what happens is you think you have something that belongs to you that's really being shared, and it's not yours, right? So therefore, you're only using what you need. This is the idea of virtualization. Started a long time ago, right? And then it's got pretty sophisticated, and now the hardware vendors and the software vendors are collaborating to make native virtualization appear, you know, where you don't have to have like, you know, you buy the virtualization kind of stuff, like VMware, right? Now, VMware still has a lot of stuff, and they'll still be around for a long time, but they're kind of doing that. And the next level of virtualization is virtualizing the application. It's actually called cloud computing. But just the ultimate form of virtualization that says that you don't own anything, right? Everything, but you're just using a piece of something else. And the idea of that is, once you do that, you're getting the most efficiency out of all the things, whatever the things are, hardware, software, networks, applications, whatever it is, right? And the other thing that's happening, we'll talk about a little bit with virtualization, that now more and more, the other transition that's happening is more and more users that aren't MIS people have computer skills. You begin to see that? They have computer skills. And actually in business, they can do more things than just Excel, an Excel spreadsheet. So that's happening. So virtual technology is big. Mobile devices, another big technology. Making it all work on the mobile. Tablets, iPads, phones, smartphones, all that kind of stuff is moving forward. Cloud computing, the ultimate, I think, in virtualization. And lean and agile processes for development are hot technologies and important and continue to go. So one of the messages I hope that I'm leaving with you is that a job in IT is a job where you're continually learning about new things, new technologies, new things, and you're applying them and helping solve business problems. That's the exciting part of, I think, you're in the center of change. You're in the center of business change. You're helping make the change, and you're obliging to the change, both of those. All right, so here's, what's the future of IT? Let's talk a little bit about that. This is this guy, chief editor, which is probably close to right. He says, in the end, there's only going to be 3 jobs in IT. There's going to be the consultant. Then there's going to be the project manager. And then finally, the developer. And this is where most of IT will be, in the developer. Okay. Now, what's missing here is all the data center stuff. Someone's doing that, right? Someone's still doing all the data center stuff. But what's happening from an IT sense are consultants, figuring out what we're going to do. And there's a lot of external companies helping you do it. There's the project manager, and then finally, in the company is the developer. So that's what he thinks is going to end up to be the 3. So let's get off of the technology a minute and just talk about the ultimate success. If I could tell you what would be your ultimate success, would you be interested? The ultimate success. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a clip, a video clip of a guy that's written a couple books. It'll give you a few thoughts. Let's see if make sure I got video. Here we go. And then we'll talk about it.
Hi there. Well, look at all these people. Is it any wonder I love myself?
Is it okay?
We're talking about the power of today, and we're talking about the possibility of tomorrow. So before I actually get down to business, I want to just share with you something. I want to actually together get some leverage on the possibility of tomorrow, get some leverage on the future. The best way to do it is with a kind of a visual thing. So what I want you to do, what I'm going to do right now, is I'm going to bake. Let's get some stuff out of the way here. I'm going to bake a leverage cake. Please leave the lights up. I want to see what's going on. I'm going to bake a leverage cake. And I'm going to make a cake right here. With 2 layers, with some good juicy stuff in the middle, some icing around it, and a cherry on the top. The first layer at the bottom is brought to us by the Stanford Business School, who for 20 years studied people looking for the success factor. Those are their words. They determined the only identifiable predictor of success was what they call, this stuff for 20 years, social extroversion, the ability to speak up. 20 years, the only thing they could identify across everybody, to speak up. The second layer was a further study in which it was determined that as much as 85% of your financial success comes from your ability to engender trust and respect in other people. The cream in the middle, here, comes to us from the Harvard School of Health Sciences, who did a study called the Alameda County Study. And they looked at 7,000 people over 9 years. And they determined that the people who did not actively connect with other people, and so they looked at people between 35 and 65, which is possibly most of us here. They looked at 7,000 people for 9 years, and they determined that the people who did not actively socialize and connect with other people were 3 times more likely to die of medical illness than the ones who did. How's this cake looking so far? Now for the icing on the cake, which is the good news. We were all born with several things. One of them was enthusiasm. We were all born with enthusiasm, otherwise we never would have made it out. And the other thing is we were born with fantastic people skills. We were all born with great people skills. Babies have fantastic people skills. We're going to talk today about rapport by design and about connecting in business and about the possibilities of connecting, because it's all about people, I have no doubt. It's all about connecting with other people. I'm not asking you, though, to go and learn flamenco dancing, spot welding, German, and pottery to do this. I'm saying these are things you were born with. We all have the ability to connect and to be enthusiastic with other people. And the cherry on top, well, the cherry on top will be the first thing I show you today and prove to you today. It's about how we connect and the importance of connecting with other people.
Okay. That clip, which I think is very true, if you want to take away something here today. The ultimate success is social extroversion. I mean, the people are important and you know how to connect to people. You know, the things are important, but not as important. Trust and respect, very important for the ultimate success. Active social connections keeps you healthy. And then he says that people skills and enthusiasm, we're all born with them. Somehow or other, some of us lose them. I don't know where we lose them, right? But they're lost. People skills and enthusiasm. I would suggest that one of the things you guys might want to consider is reading this book here, How to Connect in Business in 90 Seconds or Less, Nicholas Boothman. Now, this is going to relate to the next section that I'm going to talk about. You know, one of the comments I was asked to discuss is there any way that anything I need to do or could help me get a job, right? Because ultimately, I guess you all going to want to go to work, right? So how can I get a job? So I thought I'd spend a little time talking about that. I call this job offer success. That's what we all want. You know, we're going to come out of here and you want to be successful in getting a job, right? So let's talk about it. The interview gets you, the resume gets you an interview. So how does the resume get you an interview? Let me describe that. It gets them to know you and like you and imagine what value you might bring. Now, one of the things you have to understand from a business standpoint, what the business is doing with your resume is trying to decide if we should keep it and invite you or throw it away. Because I have too many that I'm looking at. And I don't want to talk to all those people. So what I'm trying to do is decide, will I throw your resume away? So the thing you have to have in your mind is, how do you keep me, the business guy, from throwing your resume away? I'm going to show you. This is how you do it without getting it thrown away. Now, the resume only gets you the interview. The interview gets you the job. So the most important thing is the interview. So I'm going to talk about the interview, and I'm going to talk about how you can prepare for the interview so you will be selected. So the first part is how to have not your resume thrown away. Second part is how to get selected. So here's the interview. That gets you the job. How does it get you the job? They get to know you. They get to like you. They get to trust you. And they confirm the value you will bring. And you move them emotionally. Because oh, this is Warren Buffett's. No, the decision to hire someone is an emotional decision. It's not a logical decision. So you need to move emotionally. But this is what Warren Buffett's hiring criteria is. He only has 3 things: personal integrity, intelligence, and high energy level. We'll talk about his a little bit later. Here's the perfect resume. Okay, why is this the perfect resume? What did I say you needed in a resume so it wouldn't be thrown away? They need to know you. Okay, this guy's name is Zach. How does it, when I see this, by the way, this is only the first half of the first page. And the reason you see the perfect resume only the first half of the first page, because it's the only thing that matters. Everything you say after that doesn't matter. I'm exaggerating a little here, right? It matters somewhat, but this is the part that matters. This is the marketing of you. The rest of the stuff, you're not marketing you, you're just describing stuff. All the rest of the resume says is you existed, you did something useful, you know, and you tell me you did something useful. I don't know if you did anything useful, but that's what the resume say. I existed and I did some things, right? So here, how do I know Zach? I know Zach because I see his name, I see what he's looking for, and I see his picture. So I have to say I know Zach, right? When I see him, I know him, right? Now, if somebody knows you, will they throw your resume away? Someone's calling me. Oops. No, they won't. So you want to get a person to know you. So that's how they know you. So the next thing is they need to like you. So how do they like you? Just by looking at the resume. Well, right here. Picture again, smiling. Does it look like you could like Zach? What do you think? Could you like Zach? Some of the girls, could you like Zach? And then you see what he's got about a paragraph here, right? I have found my voice in marketing, having invested the past 10 years developing a highly diverse set of skills. I have strategic marketing mindset, blah, 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 right? So you kind of get to know who he is, right? And he's got a list of kind of things he's done over here. Right? That's what I consider the perfect resume. You know what I see in most resumes? People define themselves where they live and their phone number and their email address. In the most critical marketing space of the resume, they define themselves by their address, phone number, and email address. I mean, if they're interested, they can find that in the footer. You don't want to waste the marketing part of your resume defining yourself by where you live and how someone can get a hold of you, right? Okay, the next is imagine value. Okay, you're going to imagine value. Where do you imagine value from? From here. I mean, he's got a nice thing here. Of all the marketing managers we had at Franklin Covey, Zach Cheney is hands down the most productive and effective by a large margin, quoting an executive. Okay? And then here, more details, right? So you see why I say that's the perfect resume? Does anybody have a question on the perfect resume? Yes?
Why do you think it's perfect? I think it's not perfect.
That's why you're there and I'm here.
Because when we look at the right side, they don't tell me anything. Like those.
That's the beauty of it. The more you use the resume to do the interview, the less likely they'll want to interview you. Now, you may not think it's perfect. I think it's perfect, right? And probably we need to move on.
Is this the whole resume or just?
No, just the first half. There's more to the resume, right? No, there's more to the resume. All the standard stuff. Here's I worked here 10 years and I did these things, and I worked here and this is my education, blah, 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 right? So I'm only showing the first half, right? Okay. So the perfect interview. Now this is the most important. Perfect interview. They have to like you, trust you, and imagine the value again, right? So how do they like you? They like and trust you because immediately you give them eye contact, smile, and you connect with them. And if you read one of that books, you'll get a little more insight into there, right? how to make, one of his books is How to Make Someone Like You in 90 Seconds or Less, right? It's really important to get them to like you in the interview and then trust you. You need to turn the interview into a conversation versus an interview. What is that? Well, if you don't make it a conversation and it's just, someone asking you a bunch of questions and you answering the bunch of questions, I'll guarantee you won't be hired. You need to make it a conversation, okay? One of the things you already know is what they want to know. What does they want to know? They want to know who you are and what value you might bring. Well, if they already know that's what they want to know, why don't you tell them that without them asking you that? All right? Conversation with the interviewer. First, an interesting story. Remember, hiring is an emotional decision, so you want to tell stories because stories connect with people emotionally. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to have an interesting story about who you are. And before you get really into the interview, you should say to them, hello, my name's Dave. Would you mind, before we get started, I could just tell you a little bit about myself? What do you think they would say? Yes. I would say, well, I'd have to admit that I came out of my mother's womb as a geek, and somehow or other got connected with computers and IBM, and I love them. I have loved computers. I've loved that kind of stuff. I got connected with people in leadership, and I found out I even love the people more. That's kind of who I am. So the first story you tell, this is just a story, right? First story you tell is the most interesting story, and it's about who you are and what it means, a little bit about what it means to the business, right? Guess what that? So, here's a story about trust. Remember, they're going to like you and trust you. So how do you get a person to trust you? Usually takes a long time. And the way you get a person, you trust a person, is what? They always tell the truth, right? If I always tell the truth, then you trust me, right? You ask me something, I tell you the truth. I always tell you the truth. Right? So how do you in an interview get the person that's interviewed to know they can trust you? Here's what you do. You tell them a story that you might be embarrassed about. Tell them about a failure you've had. Why? Tell them something that says, well, I would start it this way. I'd say, before we get too far into this interview, can I tell you about my biggest screw-up? Nobody says that. They always, in fact, most resumes are exaggerated, and most interviews, they don't tell the truth. Mostly. You don't know what's really happening. So essentially what you're doing here is you're essentially telling someone something that could hurt you in getting a job. Do you understand that? Could hurt you in getting the job, right? Hey, I have to tell you this. We did a project in my master's work, at the university, and if it was a real project, I would have lost the company $500,000. Now, here's what I learned. Now, they say, well, why would I want to hire this person that just lost $500,000 on a practice thing? No, that isn't what they want. They want to know if they can trust you, and you told them something. Everybody's imperfect. We all make mistakes, right? So tell them about one of your mistakes, then tell them about what you learned. Because what you're doing here, is you're getting them to trust you. I trust you. If they like and trust you and can imagine some value, they're going to hire you. It's going to hire you. So what else do you need? Well, if you want to get them to imagine stories, you need stories about your value. So you need an opening story, you need a screw-up story, and you need a half a dozen stories about your value. What value you bring in a story form. Now you need to prepare for the interview. Now once you have those down, when they ask you a question, you have a repertoire of stories to tell them. Right? Just pick one of the stories. Oh, let me tell you about the time when, have you been a quality person all your life? Well, let me tell you about the time when I was on the quality project you know, of this little thing and how we dug into it. And when it was finally released, it only had one bug. I don't know, I'm just making up stories, right? Get the idea? Do you have a question? A comment? You're my chief critic here, I'm just checking.
Oh, I'm not sure about the, like...
I wouldn't be sure about anything. There might be better things you could do in this process. I'm just giving you my experience. 30 years as CIO, I've hired hundreds of people. I've fired maybe not quite as many, but I've done that as well. As I say, develop 6 more stories, okay? As it says, the hiring decision is based on emotion and needs to create emotion and feelings with your stories. I trust you. This is what the person has to say. I trust you. You make sense. You know, whatever you say, you make sense. And lastly, you move me. I feel moved by you, right? And we're just about through here, so I know I'm running out of time. This requires preparation and practice. It's probably the most important thing you'll do in your life is to practice for an interview, because the interview is going to get you the job. Most people fail at interviews because they do not practice. They think they've got all the, all their life's experiences, all they need, and they can answer any question. No, you have to be prepared. You have to have the stories. You have to know what your goal is. Your goal is to get hired, to get them to know, like, and trust you. Okay, finally, this is, remember, Buffett said personal integrity, always tell the truth. That's important. Intelligent, makes sense. High levels of emotionally committed. And he says, without number 1, 2 and 3 don't matter. 2 and 3 don't matter. Why is that the case? Here's an article. Sometime this week, nearly half of all the business people in North America will lie to a client, to a boss, or to an employee. This was 10 years ago, taken out of Sales and Marketing Management, July 2002. Why is integrity so important? I would suggest that most of the world does not have it. And what you want to do is demonstrate you're not in that part of the world. Because integrity is what maybe the most important ingredient of getting hired. We hope it's what you learned from your mother. And if you didn't learn it from your mother, you learned it in Sunday school as a little kid, right? Wherever you learned it, it's important. And maybe even more important than the technical stuff that you've already learned. So with that, personal integrity, important. I say thank you. You are going to be the person of the year that controls the information age. It's in your hands. I mean, you're now in the final phases of getting educated to jump out into the world, and you can be these. You could be this. So I say thank you. That's who I am. If you want to communicate with me, there's my email address. So thank you very much.